This is the look of a smug face. A face that thinks it knows better. After a year of telling me that I would like the CRF450RL more than my very own beloved 500 EXC, my friend Riley had the opportunity to try and prove it to me. If he was right, I would most likely sell my beloved 500 EXC. I've owned my 500 for just over a year. It's a 2014 model and it's got all the mods you'd expect to make it a happy little dual sport lightweight adventure machine. The big tank, the big seat, and all the accoutrements to make it comfy for my long boy body. And all the things to make this bike breathe and make good power in an unrestricted fashion. Now, for the sake of fairness, my 500 is 10 years old and Riley's 450RL is brand new. And the argument could and should be brought forward that the 500 has wear and tear on the engine, and perhaps some of those horsepower have escaped. And overall, it probably does not ride or feel as nice as a brand new shiny KTM. However, I don't really care about that. You see, I don't use this bike as a hardcore enduro race machine. This 500 to me is an ultra lightweight ADV bike that I can ride anywhere off-road without ever second guessing myself.
When I say lightweight ADV bike, this is what's in my head.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
I want to do thousands of kilometers like this. So I'm going to crawl on the bike, on a lightweight bike, big fuel range. This is what I want to do. Love it!
Well, there you have it. That's what I'm looking for in a bike at this stage of my life. And whatever bike fulfills those needs in my life is fine with me. I have zero brand loyalty.
Except for this brand of Chinese spicy oil.
My bike feels very tall coming down here like this. Scooched back, I'm just a lumbering tall oof. But boy oh boy, I do like this bike. I know Riley wants me to buy a 450 because he hates KTM and got some bad experiences, got some trauma. He has that Austrian trauma, not from the war. I do like my 500. It's a good bike. What a great machine.
The 450RL and the 500 EXC are very similar in a lot of ways, but there are some crucial differences that could sway a person one way or the other. To be completely transparent with you, there is one main thing that bothers me the most with my 500, and it is vibrations. Now, if you're riding this bike for an hour or so, and you're in single track or off-road, you're probably not going to notice the vibrations at all. But since I am foolishly choosing a bike like this as an adventure bike, it means that I spend a lot of time sitting on the highway at highway speeds. I did change the front sprocket to bring the RPM down on the highway, and this was a huge help. At highway speeds, it felt like the motor was hardly working. But even in those lower RPMs, it is still annoying, and my feet are always feeling terrible at the end of the day. Yeah, I'm probably being a baby, but babies always get what they want, so listen to me whine. Vibrations is just one downside of having 500 cc's in one cylinder with a bunch of compression to make a bunch of power. It's gonna vibrate. I've owned a few big single dual sports like the DR650, and I've ridden lots of others, but none of them have vibrated as much as my 500. So when offered a ride on the 450RL, the main thing I wanted to know was exactly what this bike felt like at 100 kilometers per hour. How exciting for you to watch. Well, much to my annoyance, Riley was right. The Honda is way smoother. It's not like a Goldwing, it still vibrates, but the difference between this and my 500 is significant. There was something else I noticed immediately going into the first corner. The initial turn-in on the Honda is way slower than the KTM. So when we pulled over, I was very curious to look at the fork angle. The slacker angle really made the bike feel a lot more stable on the highway, and the Honda wants to just ride straight, whereas the KTM is a little more keen to dive into corners with that steeper angle. I prefer the Honda rake on the highway or fast off-road stuff, whereas the KTM is a lot easier to navigate in slow, tight single track. While we're on the subject of chassis differences, there are some other things worth pointing out. The Honda has a more rigid aluminum frame, whereas the KTM has the more pliable steel frame. The Honda did ride stiffer, however it was probably just suspension setup I was feeling. One of the big differences if you're using this bike as an ADV bike will be mounting luggage. My specific year KTM still had the rear aluminum subframe, but KTM ditched that for a composite rear subframe. The general consensus is that it is not sufficiently strong to be weight bearing, whereas the Honda still has a fully aluminum rear subframe that you can just mount your rackless system directly to, where the KTM should probably have an aftermarket rear rack installed. Out of the box, the KTM is definitely the lighter machine, but the Honda does have some heavy parts that can be ditched, and it won't need extra stuff added to it to be an adventure bike. At the end of the day, the KTM will always be the lighter machine, but once they are both upgraded and fitted for adventure, I don't think the difference will be as noticeable. Another area the KTM will have the Honda beat is power output, and I thought that even though my bike was a few years older than the Honda, I would still be faster than the Honda. It's a KTM. If it's good at anything, it's making power at any expense. Well, that didn't go as planned. A newer KTM with a lighter rider and less fuel probably would have produced different results.
Let's go find a cold beverage.
Yeah, let's do it.
This is Riley everywhere he goes. It's a pretty little town. We shouldn't be allowed out of the house, I swear. You'd think we're 18 years old.
That being said, my KTM has more than enough power for me, so seeing the Honda pull on me puts my mind at ease about the Honda feeling slow. The 450 does make a lot of its power down low, whereas the 500 likes to be revved out a little bit more. That low down power makes the 450 a wheelie machine. Now the numbers I've seen on new 500s versus 450s generally puts the 500 with a few more horsepower on the dyno. The 500 has that extra displacement with the longer stroke and runs a more aggressive cam profile. Honda's RL has a less aggressive cam than its off-road spec R comes with.
Dinosaur bone, for sure.
This alongside with the shorter stroke probably explains a bit of the smoothness and could possibly help the motor live a little bit longer as it's less stressed. On top of the engine differences, Honda has done a few more things that I feel tone down the 450 and make it the less hardcore of the two. The rear frames are foam injected to absorb sound and vibration. The sprocket is rubber mounted, not a big heavy cush drive, but just rubber on the sprocket. The bike comes with engine guards that are foam back to prevent more noise from escaping. But lots of people ditch those because they claim they hold moisture. It really feels like KTM slapped a license plate and some lights on a high-powered dirt bike, while Honda took the conservative, toned-down approach to making this thing street legal. Hence the Honda gaining 30-ish pounds over the KTM and having less power. The KTM is the more raw-feeling machine of the two for sure. So again, it really just going to come down to what sort of riding you are doing. In regards to reliability, I have zero complaints with my 500. The thing has lived a hard life in the snow in Canada and in the deserts of Mexico. For 10 years it has been nothing but reliable. I have heard rumors the newer 500s are having more issues, but I have not owned one. If you have any experience with them, leave a comment. From what I've seen, it's pretty much the same story with the Honda. Everything I've read has been about its great reliability. Both these bikes are pretty maintenance heavy in comparison to adventure bikes or more street-oriented dual sports. But in comparison to ADV bikes, they are very simple to work on, hardly any plastics, and almost no complicated electronics to worry about. Companies like Blackstone Labs have done lots of tests on oil life at around 15 to 2,000 mile mark, and everything is coming back clean. So for myself and the type of riding I am doing, I have zero concerns with pushing these oil changes past the manufacturer's recommended. Lots of people are complaining about the Honda and flare-outs. If you talk to guys coming from the dual sport or ADV bikes, they will say it's unrideable. If you talk to guys who grew up riding 450 dirt bikes, they will look at you like you're an idiot. Now, obviously it is a real thing and people are experiencing, but I do think some adjustments to your riding and perhaps a throttle tamer could do away with this problem altogether. With that being said, my 500 is not free from this problem. Most of the time it's fine, but if it gets really hot and I'm riding first gear start and stop stuff, it likes to flare out as well.
I meant to do that. Oh, oh no!
Both of these bikes have several different things to help this issue, however, I think some time on the bike could be one of the biggest fixes. Choosing between these bikes doesn't leave a winner or a loser. It's a sliding scale of comfort or performance. And each company clearly chose which lane they want to try to occupy. And as a consumer, I get to choose which one works best for me. Because I want something for long distance, highway, single track, dual track, and gravel use, I really think I would enjoy my life more with the Honda than the KTM. I have had a lot of fun on the KTM. It is an incredible bike. If you are thinking about getting one, do your research, but man oh man, I did love mine. Since filming this video, I did sell the 500, and the plan was to buy a 450RL right away. But to be honest, I have been having way too much fun on this Honda. More on that in the next video.
This stuff is so deep.
If you enjoyed the video, leave a comment, consider subscribing. I put a ton of work into these videos and seeing the engagement really encourages me with making more. Love you all lots, and until the next one, have a great day.
It's almost round.